On. Dave, how are you? We are here again, and I'm in studio finally, and it looks like you're in a new location.
I am doing good. I am in a new location. I'm in the basement of our home in Utah. We still have a home here where our college students live. You can see some Legos behind me. It's become my son's Lego workshop.
That's awesome. So is he kind of like a Santa there?
He is. He's got more Legos here. If I show you the room, he has a Lego business. He's been involved in Legos since he was a little kid, and there are Legos everywhere here in this room.
That's so cool. So what's it like being back in Utah? I know that's where you grew up, and then you left and went to Puerto Rico. Then you live in Tennessee. Now you're back visiting some family.
Yeah, it's been really nice. It's been nice. It's a little cold, colder than I'm used to for sure, especially coming out of Puerto Rico. But it's been nice. In fact, I stopped by Enterprise where you live, but unfortunately, because of your COVID and our timing, we didn't even get to say hi.
Yeah, now I'm back in the office feeling great. My taste buds are back. I mean, that's the best part because for 7 days I couldn't taste or smell anything, and that was rough.
So the dog food eating's over now, or are you going to keep that up now that the taste buds are back?
Dog food's over. All the weird food, chocolate and pickles that I ate together, all that's over. I'm back to just actually eating real food and tasting it now.
That's awesome. Glad to know that you're feeling better finally.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're in the same state. We're just 4 hours away.
Yeah, it's separate ends. So I've made 2 trips there now. Hopefully I don't make another one this week. That's a little too much for me, having to do 7-hour drives every day. But I feel like a truck driver all of a sudden.
Well, that's cool. Well, Dave, today, obviously, we're talking about retirement. And for those joining us live, welcome. And for those watching on replay, we're so glad you're here. So, Dave, let's talk a little bit about the show and why we do this, because I think we need to really help people understand about retirement. But why do we do this Q&A every single week?
Yeah, we're really here to help people to gain knowledge, but the knowledge really is useless unless you take action. So the whole goal is to get people to a point where they can gain the knowledge they need and realize where their retirement may be and versus where it could be, and then take the steps to put that retirement where it should be.
And one of the things we talk about a lot through the podcast and through webinars, but people get into retirement, they feel like they've put their money somewhere, and they set it and forget it. So what's the damage of doing that?
Yeah, the biggest problem is there's too many changes going on in the world right now. We are living longer. We've got tax rates that are going to be changing in the future because of this increasing national debt that we have and the baby boomers coming into the retirement programs. So we've just got to understand you just can't put it there and think it's going to work out the way that it should. Like anything else in your life, it takes time, it takes attention, and it takes your willingness to be able to make it a priority for yourself.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And Dave, we've got Karen, one of our favorite viewers on. And so I want to wish Karen a great, happy, almost Thanksgiving, and welcome to the live show this morning.
Yeah, Karen, welcome. Glad to have you there. Looking forward to having Thanksgiving dinner at your house. We'll be over sometime tomorrow afternoon.
And Karen, I actually do have a t-shirt for you. I tried to send you a message last week, so check your messages from me because you have a Prosperity Guy shirt coming to you. So I sent you a message, so respond back, and I can't wait to get that sent out to you. So congratulations.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We also got new ones too. So I'm not sure I can show it here, but you've got a new Prosperity Guy shirt. I've got them. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I made sure I went with the company color, which is orange.
Yeah, I just thought it was you were still enjoying the harvest season.
Oh, yeah, that's what I do all the time. Well, and Karen, she's joining us from North Carolina. And for those watching live, let us know where you're watching from. We love to see where everyone's coming from. We usually get California and Florida and North Carolina. And I'm just so glad to have all of you with us. And Dave, as we get going in retirement, again, what we do is we have a series of questions that I ask you. And then those joining us live will go ahead and submit their questions to us as well. And why do you like to do this? First of all, there's so many questions that come in, and I don't know, can you answer every question that comes in? And how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I wish I could answer every question. Unfortunately, there are some questions that come in that I don't know enough detail about, but I do it because I believe I've got a lot of knowledge that other people can benefit from, that I can help them better understand their situation so that they can get to a safe and secure retirement themselves.
And at the end of the day, what are you hoping to accomplish? So Karen's on here, for example. What can we do to help Karen? What's the end result for you?
Yeah, the end result is for them to gain the knowledge so then they take action to get the retirement where it needs to be. And it's going to be different for everyone. That's one thing you need to understand. I'm not here to tell you what your retirement should look like. That's your decision. What I'm here to tell you is the risk facing your retirement and the steps that you can take to get those risks taken out of your retirement so you can have a better retirement.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, let's go ahead and get started. I have a series of questions we're going to ask you and throw at you and hope that we can get through it. I do have an underlining theme that we'll get through as we get going, but I wanted to start with our first question here. So this is from Sunnit. Why would you pay for a permanent insurance policy when you can buy a term insurance policy that will last until age 95?
This is a great question, and it's something that we need to talk more about for sure, because there's a lot of misunderstandings out there in regards to what these policies should be providing, what you should be doing with these policies. Now, if you're just looking for a death benefit and you don't expect to live past 95 based on your current health situation, then a term policy may be an option for you. 95 is pretty old, but still we've got over 10% of the population that's going to live past there. And you've also got to understand less than 2%. See, our less than 2% of society ever gets paid out on a term insurance policy, even though they may go out that long. But the biggest issue is we're using permanent insurance policies to eliminate risk in retirement. And that term policy is not going to do that. Yes, it may provide a death benefit, but it did nothing to help you get through that longest self-imposed period of unemployment that many people are going to have throughout their whole life.
So Dave, what does longevity play in this? Because as we're talking at age 95, that seems pretty far-fetched, but not really anymore.
Yeah, it really isn't. Now, high probability, again, majority of people are going to be dead by then. But there is probability you're going to outlive there. And again, the problem is it didn't solve your long-term care issue. It didn't solve your tax rate risk. It didn't solve your sequence of return risk. Your other assets that are out there invested in the market are now subject to all these risks, and you've got financial issues that could completely disrupt your retirement. So it's really not about insurance. I mean, that's what's, when we look at this, many people think, oh, you're just trying to sell us insurance. No, not at all. What I'm trying to do is help you eliminate the risks that you have in your retirement. It just so happens that insurance companies are one of the best ways you can eliminate these risks effectively and efficiently and in a way that can work out for the overall good of your retirement.
And Dave, we're going to be talking, I've got lots of questions in here for the life insurance retirement plans as we kind of dive through some of the questions today. So we'll get a little bit more detail on this, but let's get to our next question, because again, this is another great one that came in from Svetlana. And then they ask, how do required minimum distributions play out with the 3% withdrawal rate rule?
Let me explain the withdrawal rate rule a little bit first, and then I can answer this question. Let me also explain how required minimum distributions work, so those that are here on the show can better understand the question and where it's coming from and the concern that people have. So what we've got now is we've got a situation based on current interest rates and Monte Carlo simulations, which is mathematical calculation that was brought about by Stanislaw Ulam back in the 1940s. He was the one who created the Monte Carlo simulation. But by applying that to current retirement plans, what we find is that the correct withdrawal rate's right around 3%. Now, some people are saying it could be lower. It could be 2.5%. Again, depends too on when you start taking that money out. If you start taking money out of your retirement at 70 or 80 versus 60, maybe that percentage is going to be slightly different. But for the majority of people, they're stuck with a 3% distribution rate. Well, the problem is required minimum distributions out of an IRA, once you get into your 70s at 72, it starts at 3.91%, so almost 4%. So the concern that they're having here is they're saying, wait a second, the government's telling me I got to take 4% out of my retirement plan. You're telling me I can only take 3% and have it last. I've got a mathematical difference and a problem here. And there is a solution, CR. The solution is what people have to do is, one, they should get into a tax-free environment so they don't have the requirement anyway. I mean, it'd be my recommendation to convert over during this period of historically low taxes into a Roth IRA, and then you're not even going to have to worry about it. But if you choose to stay in that account, you're going to have to reinvest part of that money. You're going to have to put it back into the taxable bucket and then continue to pay tax on the growth there. So, just some issues there that could be solved if people would take advantage of this period in time that we have right now where they can do some conversions.
Dave, we also know that taxes are going up, and so that's something we're preparing for. But what if these withdrawal rates, what if they start to increase or decrease? What's the probability of us dealing with more issues as this comes about as well?
Yeah, great question, CR. And it's a big issue because we're living longer. So in theory, what's happening is these distribution rates are going to continue to go down, especially when we've got a situation where we've got such low interest rates. Now, what happens when we have hyperinflation and you can only take out X amount of dollars? Now you've got a major issue. And that is one of the biggest risks facing your retirement is inflation can completely destroy your retirement, because in working years, usually we have COLA increases, we can increase our money. But in retirement, that money's stagnant. You've already earned the money. The opportunity to be able to do the transition there is going to be very difficult.
So Dave, as we talk about inflation risk, let's say the question that we get a lot is, why can't the government just print more money? I know this is something we talk about, but I think a lot of people think that, and they just say, let's just print more money. I mean, what does that do to our economy? What does that do to what we're trying to do today?
Yeah, money works just like any other product out there. It's all about supply and demand. Money's valuable because there's not a ton of it. I mean, obviously there's trillions of dollars, but when you compare the amount of money out there that's being spent versus the amount of money that's available, it's valuable because there's less money out there. Now, once you put more money into the market, all of a sudden you've got a situation where scarcity is not such an issue. And now you've got a point where the dollars you have today are going to be by far less tomorrow than you're able to get today. And that can be very problematic.
And for those watching live, go ahead and submit your retirement questions. I mean, we're talking everything from Medicare to Social Security to reverse mortgages to, what we're talking about with life insurance retirement plans. If you have questions on these, please go ahead and submit those. And when we get a break, we'll kind of jump on like we're doing now and make sure we get Dave to answer your question and go through this. So Dave, again, as we're talking about retirement, one of the things we need to focus on is education. I feel like we're really lacking in education, or maybe we feel like we've already put some money aside somewhere, or we have Social Security and we feel like that's enough for us. But I feel like people aren't really getting the proper education. So what are you providing to give people right now to help them propel their education a little bit better?
We have so many webinars, so many classes, so much information out there, CR. And that's one of the great things about what we offer is right now we've got 13 different webinars that we put together on various retirement topics that affect you and your retirement. We've got the podcast that gets released every Friday where I continue to talk about retirement. And we've got this show every week. And in the process of all that, there's opportunities to get free books. So we've got so many educational tools and so much information. Sometimes it can even become a little overwhelming maybe for people because they're going, wait a second, there's got hours and hours of presentations. But the more you can learn about these topics, the more you can get the overall details and then let an advisor help walk you through those. I mean, that's why you have advisors, because that's what they do. That's their interest. That's their expertise that you get with people that can really help walk you through your retirement and what it really should look like and could look like.
So Dave, let's say I'm a first-time viewer, I'm on the show and I hear about all these things and I go check out your webinars and I'm overwhelmed. What do you tell me as my first webinar? What's the first thing you want me to do so this way I can start to get a better handle of maybe how I start? Because maybe I'm fresh at this and I'm just ready to start, but I don't even know where.
Yeah, the place I tell everyone to get started is getting safely through retirement or getting safely home in retirement. We have two different titles out there that we use, but it's the overall risk of retirement review webinar. So what it's going to do is go through the financial risks that you're dealing with and identify those. So now you've got this identification of what you're facing, then you can go down those other paths. If you're concerned about tax rate risk in your retirement, well, then you can go to the power of zero. If maybe you're looking for a reverse mortgage, you think that's going to be a way to provide you with additional income, you can take the reverse mortgage webinar. If Social Security, you don't understand the way it works, you're concerned that you may not get the maximum benefits, take that webinar. So that's the great thing is once we can identify the various risks, then you can really start honing in on those that you're most concerned about so you can better understand those. But the reality is, CR, for most people, they still need to get someone else involved to help them put it all together, because very difficult for them to get access to the tools and the resources that we have at our disposal to be able to get people the retirement they're looking for.
And I would put a caution out there if you have a financial planner or somebody that's advising you on this, and they're just, hey, I mean, my wife and I, for example, we did one of these years ago, I mean, probably like 20 years. All we do every once in a while is get something in the mail letting us know where we are with our accounts, and that's it. And that's the kind of thing we want to avoid. So you're not out there just getting something in the mail every 6 months or a year saying, hey, here's where you are. Because really that's the set it and forget it. And like you said earlier, we're going to be in big trouble as things start to decrease for us. And we're going to find this out later.
Sarah, what I love about the advisors that we work with in the process is they're going to show you a side-by-side comparison. And this is what's awesome, because it's not like they're saying, oh, I'm going to just tell you that I'm going to provide you a great retirement. I had one of these the other day. Someone had put a plan together for one of my clients where they'd gone through and told them how much money they were going to save. Well, you know what? They had so many spreadsheets that the clients just looked at and said, oh, great, that's awesome. Well, when you got into the math of it all, you realize that, hey, you're not saving me any money. I could do this on my own and make as much money as you're telling me you're going to save me. This is all smoke and mirrors. Mm-hmm. Well, with the advisors, they're taking both plans so you can see them side by side. It's not just trying to say, oh, here's my presentation, and here's how amazing your retirement's going to be. It's like, look, you can keep doing what you're doing, and it's going to be X. If that's good enough for you, great. If not, here's why, and why is going to be better in most situations. And those that it isn't, it's like, hey, if X is working out for you, you've already put everything into place you need to, then good for X. Let it continue to work for you, and appreciate the opportunity to get to know people, because that's really what we're here for.
And again, if you want to get in touch with any of these advisors or work with anyone, go to theprosperityguy.com, and you can go on there and you can set up a strategic plan. You can put that together, work with an advisor, and I think it'll be very helpful for you. But Dave, let's get on to our next question here. I want to make sure we get some of these questions answered. This one's from Heidi. She says, is there a way to calculate the cost of converting an IRA to a Roth IRA for 2020?
Yes, there is, Heidi, but it's probably going to be a little difficult for you to do it yourself. Again, you can try it. There's calculators out there on the internet, but the biggest thing you need to understand is what your other taxable income is going to be for the year, because that's going to have to be taken into consideration. Because what you'll do is you'll take your other taxable income and then add this Roth conversion on top of there in your highest tax bracket. So you need to know where you're already at, and then you also need to know any effect that additional conversion money would cause on other items. For example, if you're already in retirement and your Social Security has not been taxed in the past, well, maybe it's going to create taxability of Social Security because of provisional income. Maybe you're on Medicare and you're paying the lowest premiums because your income's below the threshold. Well, now all of a sudden you do this, you may increase your premium. So it can be calculated, but make sure you're including all these other items in. And usually the best option is to work with someone to do it, but entirely up to you how you handle it.
So Dave, as we're talking about these IRAs, we have Roth conversions. Why are people moving toward this? What's the draw to kind of help people move this direction?
Well, we realize that we have a debt crisis, and it hasn't fully hit yet. But when you look at this last year, I started doing retirement webinars very actively about a year ago, CR. And at that point, our national debt on the books was $22.5 trillion. We just passed $27 trillion, and we're not even at the end of this year yet. So we've added $4.5 trillion. It's probably going to be $5 trillion. You realize that just can't go on. I mean, if you look at your own household, you've got a couple of options when you get to that point. You've either got to go bankrupt if you overspend, or you've got to figure out how to make more money. Well, the bankruptcy for the government is printing more money, which isn't a good option because it creates hyperinflation. And so what do we have to do? We've got to raise taxes. And they're already planning to do that. I mean, if you look at the next administration, there's a certain group of people that they're targeting to raise taxes on, but don't be fooled by it. The reality of it is there ain't enough rich people in the world to pay all of America's taxes. It's just not going to happen.
Dave, isn't there another way out? Because we talk about all this, but what about death? I mean, it's kind of a funny thing, but we look at this, there's more people in the ground that people are worrying because they're going to outlive this, right? That they're going to live longer. And that's a fear for a lot of people. Yeah,
it's become the biggest fear of retirees. 68% are afraid that they're going to run out of money before they run out of retirement. Well, that's based upon what we have now and the knowledge we have. So what happens if tax rates double for those individuals? What happens if Social Security all of a sudden changes? What happens if all these other miscellaneous things come into play? Those risks we talk about, what if they get realized? Well, all of a sudden that retirement looks way different than what you'd even hoped it would. And that's the thing that we're trying to prevent is, we're not here to scare anybody at all. What we're here to do is say, look, there's options and you have time, take advantage of those options so that you can have a safe and secure retirement. It's the last thing anybody wants to do is have to just sit there and worry all day of what's going to happen with the retirement money.
Exactly. Well, Dave, we have another one, Jeff, coming from Florida. He's jumping on saying, happy Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving Eve. So we're at the door of our turkey day.
Yes, we are. And Jeff, sorry, we've already been taken for dinner. So you're going to be free this year. Well, maybe Christmas we'll be able to make it to your house. The problem is we've all got so many kids that you bring one, we've got to bring the whole tribe.
Yeah, poor Karen's got to feed us all. So I don't know if it's going to work out. One of the things I really love about with Karen being on here as well is that she's been to a lot of your webinars and she talks about how much she really enjoys that. So I really encourage you, if you're on here, to be part of those webinars and to learn from that, because the more knowledge you get, the more power you have. And I think that helps you. And then you get somebody like Jeff or somebody else that really knows how to be able to take this and kind of put it into a form that you understand. That's prime. That's a perfect example of what we can do to help propel ourselves into kind of the future.
Absolutely. It definitely is. And a really good system to make it all work.
And Dave, we also have Gary on here. Gary's one of our favorites as well. I love seeing so many of you jumping on. And Gary wanted to ask this question. Do you think that the step-up basis rules will be repealed under the Biden administration?
Gary, that is one of the proposed plans. And what he's talking about here is when you end up passing away, if you've got assets, and most people have at least real estate of some form, whether it's their own house or some other piece of investment real estate or some type of brokerage accounts, that usually you're getting certain items, you're getting step up in basis in those items at the date of death. Well, the problem is they're proposing that gets taken away. And that could be a major issue, because now all of a sudden you're having to pay the tax on that. If you've got a transfer tax, you're going to have to pay the transfer tax. I think the probability of that happen comes down to what happens to the Senate. If the Senate is all Democratic, I think you're going to see a lot of tax changes coming very quickly. If it's not, I think we see some of this stuff happen over time. But the current proposal is lower the estate exemption from over 11 million down to 3.5, and then get rid of this step up in basis. For many middle American families, it could get very, very expensive very quick if these things go by the wayside.
And Dave, you talked about these are proposed ideas, and we talk about proposed for taxes and for retirement. I just want to pop this up here really quick and have you kind of tell me a little bit about what this is.
Yeah, so this is one of our upcoming webinars that we're doing, and we're talking just about the retirement changes. So none of them have happened yet. They're all proposed changes. It's all stuff that may or may not happen. Part of it we don't even know all the details on yet, but it's a webinar to give people an idea of where we're going. Because just as Gary brings up here with this issue with the step up in basis, I mean, think about CR. If you're in a person where you've got a piece of real estate that's appreciated substantially and you're going to have tax, well, before it got transferred, you didn't have to worry about selling the real estate. Your family could keep that. But now what happens if you've got maybe a home that's above the exemption amounts that are allowed, the $250,000 per individual? So you've got a home that's maybe worth $1 million. You're in California somewhere. You bought it for a couple $100,000 years ago. So you're way over the amount, and you're thinking, oh, my family can inherit this. Well, now they've got maybe a $200,000 or $300,000 tax bill. How are they going to pay that? If there's no other assets, they have to sell that home, or they've got to get another big mortgage on it. So it really creates issues for all Americans. Obviously, those who have more money is going to be a bigger problem for, but we're just going to have to wait and see. For January is probably going to be when it sounds like we'll find out who controls House, Senate, and the presidency. But that's going to govern a lot of tax changes, because although we've seen over the years that many people have had proposals, if the control is not there to be able to get them all through, we unfortunately just get stagnated processes for a few years.
And Dave, I'm going to put one more plug in here for your podcast, because on your podcast, actually for last week and the week before, you actually talked about Biden quite a bit. You talked about with the proposed tax changes, the proposed retirement changes. I mean, things that are going to affect your retirement. So give me a little bit of synopsis on those two together, on what this can do for those who are watching this show now, want to go consume some of your podcasts.
Yeah, so we ended up doing two shows. I'll talk about those briefly first. The one was regarding just the overall tax changes, because he does have a number of tax changes that would just affect normal average Americans, but then also those that would affect retirement plans. And this is one of the things we've got to be aware of. When we talk about changes to retirement plans and big companies and higher tax, those type of things, you've got to realize none of it happens in a vacuum. We talk about many times they talk about one of the proposals is he's going to add transaction fees and stuff in retirement plans. Well, the problem that still often hurts the lower class person who has less money. They end up getting hurt the most, because the person who's got the money usually finds CPAs, financial advisors, other people to help get them through it. The other person doesn't. And so then they end up making even worse decisions. So I talk about both those there. Again, the podcast really is about just different topics that I believe can help you get your retirement where it should be.
And Dave, we'll jump over and try to hit a few more questions before we end here. But let's get Cecilia's question. She said, you mentioned you should not take money out of out of your retirement account during a down year in the stock market. How do you know if you are going to have a down year?
Yeah, great question. And this is one of the issues that many people have because usually they get set up on a monthly payment. So you don't know. Maybe it's a quarterly payment, maybe it's even an annual payment. What my recommendation is that you're always setting aside enough money that is not subject to high risk that you're pulling from on a regular basis. So you don't get stuck, that if the market ends up going down, you have resources available to pull money that isn't subject to sequence of return risk. But yes, if you've got just a traditional IRA and you're pulling that with your Social Security, you could have some major issues because once that market goes down, the high probability is you don't have enough money to just not pull something. So now you're at a point, it's like, oh, okay, I'll just go 6 months. Like, look at this year, CR. If we go back to the beginning of 2012, when we had the first collapse of the economy because of COVID, if you had to pull money out during that time, there's periods for some people, it's down 30%. Well, that now was locked in. But what happens if you had additional money somewhere else and you said, okay, I'll pull that money now. It's not at risk. It's, sitting there available for short-term use. I'm able to pull that. Well, then the market's now come back. And I heard yesterday it's higher now than it's ever been. We hit 30,000 on the market now. So.
Yeah, it's really hard to anticipate this. I mean, you look back at 2007 when these markets are just absolutely crazy. What do we do? I mean, it's so hard to say, when do you know you're going to have a down year? Because some of those years, I mean, we don't know at the beginning. So you go back to the first of 2020, we kind of anticipated some things happening, but nothing like this.
Yeah, you would have never seen this coming. You'd had no idea that this was going to do what it did. And so it's being prepared. It's making sure that you have things structured appropriately so you're ready for everything. So if when these things do happen, you don't have to worry about it yourself. You can put a stop on that distribution, say, okay, you know what, I'm good. I've got reserve money, your taxable bucket. That may be what you use it for. I mean, this situation, we talk about 6 months, CR, 6 months of basic living costs. 6 months would have been plenty to get you through the down market. So if you were taking money out, you could have used that money and then market comes back and you move money back into the bucket, replenish it where it needs to be, and you move forward. Now, all of a sudden, your retirement looks a lot better than if you're the people taking it out. And you've got, unfortunately, CR, the biggest thing, you've just got to turn off your emotions. I've seen so many people that took that money out when the market was down 30 and 40% and never put it back in. And now that money's just lost. The market's gone back up, and now they're going to have to try to reinvest it at a higher point than they even had before to start with. And one of the biggest issues people have.
So can advisors help with this too? I mean, I feel like we're at this point where, like you said, if we take the emotion out, my emotion right away is to call my advisor and be like, hey, what do I do? The market's crazy. Do I pull out? I mean, do they help with this too?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what they're there for. And that's what they're trained to do. They're trained to be able to look at it. We look at it more emotionally. And I see it all the time with what we do, even with tax work that I do. People get very emotional about it. And it's our job as professionals to take that emotion out and look at it from a global side, maybe sometimes from a 30,000 foot perspective, looking down and saying, look, yeah, I understand that you're scared. I understand that you're concerned. But what we've got to do is look back at history and what's happened in history. Well, history, we see the markets go down, they come back up. Markets go down, they come back up. And so, we've just got to be able to stay true to our plan and stay committed to what we're doing there.
Dave, I have a couple questions coming in from Gary here. So I wanted to pick the first one out here, and let's start with this one. Do you think that the required beginning date may increase to age 75 from age 72?
Yeah, this is a great question. And what it's talking about is the required minimum distribution. I've got mixed feelings on this one. 40% of retirees have to take the required minimum distributions to live off of. So regardless if they change the date, no matter what they do, 40% of the people are going to take that money regardless. Well, again, now what did it do? All it did is really help the wealthy to be able to not pull the money out and defer that till later. Now, if tax rates are going up in the future, government says, hey, wait as long as you want, because in the end, we're going to get far more money out of you than we otherwise would have. We're going to go ahead and let these years of historically low tax rates go by, because in the future, we're going to hit you with 50%. So do all you want. But it's a challenge, because what it's doing is it's not helping the guy who needs the money. The guy who needs the money is having to pull that out already. And any change you make here is not helping them one bit.
Well, I'm glad, like Social Security, I mean, they've made adjustments throughout the course when it first started. I think it was back in the 30s. they made adjustments, because I think if not, I think it would have been 80 by the time I think we would have got Social Security if things weren't adjusted. So could you imagine what that would be like? I mean, who would even get that?
Yeah. It was structured as a insurance against living too long. Average life expectancy was 62. You couldn't get till 65. Well, now when you take government's average life expectancy, that includes infant mortality, accidents happen during your working years, that's somewhere between 78 and 79. So we would be looking at 81, 82 years old. Yeah, I mean, the program would have all kinds of money, but you'd have a whole set of old people that are stuck in an environment where they're in poverty. And that was the other issue that Social Security was set to solve, is at the time it was put in place, 50% of retirees were in poverty. Now there's less than 10%. And that's because they did make these adjustments and get it down where they needed it to be.
And Dave, I have one last question in from Gary before this will be our last question. I won't keep you too long. I know you want to go hang out with some family and do your Thanksgiving Eve. But Gary says, to remove an index universal life insurance contract from the gross estate, would you consider using an irrevocable life insurance trust to own the contract?
Gary, I'm glad you asked this question, because what we need to understand is, what are we using this policy for? So irrevocable life insurance trust is designed to get assets out of your estate, and it can be a very effective way to do that. If you're going to exceed that 11.28 million, I think what it is now, threshold per individual, or what may become 3.5 million, it can be a great way to take assets out earlier in your life, let them grow outside of your estate, and then be able to have your kids or others inherit those. But remember, with a lot of our planning, my planning really isn't to get people large asset values to their kids when they pass away. I want you to be able to enjoy your retirement. So that index universal life and policy, we want to keep it inside the estate, because we're going to need to use it for a long-term care event potentially. We may need to use it in a down market to be able to help eliminate that sequence of return risk we just talked about, so you can pull money out of there. We may need it just to eliminate tax rate risk, that we're going to use it on a monthly basis or annual basis to pull money out of there. So depending on what you're looking at. So Gary, if you are looking at estate transfers, maybe a separate policy that you're going to use in that ILET trust. If you're looking to solve retirement risk, no, I would not move that outside of the estate, because you're going to need access to that and you're going to want that. So, and again, two different types of planning. You're just going to have to look at, for the individual working with, if they've got enough money that estate taxes are an issue, look at how you're going to approach that. But for the majority of people we talk to, and really my job as a retirement risk consultant, I'm here to help you eliminate those risks in retirement and allow you to have the best retirement you can. I mean, you can do whatever you want with your assets. You can transfer them to whoever you want, but I can promise you, I've done this now for 25 years, and most of the time, assets transferred to kids just screw their lives up. I mean, it just is the reality of what happens. I see it over and over and over again, where people end up not enjoying their retirement. They end up not spending that money, and then they pass it on to kids, and it just becomes a horrible nightmare for them.
Dave, thank you so much for answering questions. And Gary's also saying thank you, Dave. We love having you on, Gary. Appreciate you being here. We also had Jeff on, and Karen. We're very thankful for those who continually support the show week after week and jump on as we go and kind of throw a bunch of questions at you, Dave. And I really appreciate you taking time. And it seems like no matter where you are, you always have that open Wednesday you can sit down and really dive into all the things we're working on. And we really, really appreciate it.
This really is my favorite part of the week. I love getting on here and being able to talk about these topics openly. One of the challenges that you often have when you're in a webinar versus a live event, it's very hard to be able to get to people's questions and make sure they understand the question. And here I feel like we can do that if we don't answer the question in a way that explains it well enough, that people can ask a follow-up question to get that answered. So just very happy to be able to be here and be able to share knowledge with people to help them get to where they should be with their retirements.
And Dave, one other webinar I wanted to bring up, since you talked about having that webinar experience, here's one that we have coming up. And this one's making sure that people can get their CPE credit, but they can come on and ask you questions live during one of your webinars.
Yeah, this is something I'm very excited to try. We've not done this format yet in a webinar series, but it really is to get questions answered. It's not uncommon with these three different topics for us to end a webinar and have 100 questions that people have regarding these topics. So we thought it'd be fun to be able to just go live, be able to answer some of the top questions that people have. And then as the audience gets asking more and more questions, be able to get into a deep dive of their concerns and the issues they have. And to me, it's a lot of fun. Hopefully at the end, we don't have 300 unanswered questions because we're combining all topics, but hopefully we can get a lot of people to get their questions answered and feel like they're making progress with the knowledge they need.
So Dave, again, we've talked about your podcast, we've talked about your webinars, we talk about obviously joining us every week live, and we're adding new platforms. And Dave, kind of as a closing, again, I'm new to this, I'm ready to kind of take some action. What's my step? What's my end goal here, so that this way I can kind of move forward as we end our show today?
Yeah, first step is to get enough education to understand what you're getting into. Again, what we want to do is the things we teach it's not the same retirement story you hear from a traditional financial planner. You got to understand that what I'm sharing is not going to be that same story, because I'm not a financial planner. I'm a risk retirement consultant. I'm here to give you that information to help you eliminate those risks. So you need to first be able to identify those, and then you need to get with someone who can help you. And we have advisors that understand the concepts that we teach. They've been trained in the concepts that I teach. They've gone through certification processes in what I teach, so that they can then make sure that they get you to the retirement you're looking for. Because it really doesn't matter. I could teach you all day long, and there's people, I'm sure, that just take the education and enjoy what they learn. But until we apply it in our lives, it really is not going to make a big impact. And we're all going to retire, assumedly, at some point. I mean, hopefully we don't pass away before we get there. But as long as we live into 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, at some point we're all going to retire, and we need to be prepared for it.
Dave, I've got a special thank you from somebody you may know since you're back in Utah, not really in our area, but we've got Gerald on here saying thank you.
Yeah, Gerald, you're welcome, and nice to have you with us today. Yeah, I saw one of your posts on Facebook earlier showing some gratitude for many things in your life, and was thinking about you and what a great person you and your family are. I know your wife had a huge impact on one of my daughters as a piano teacher. So welcome, glad to have you, and thanks for doing all the great things that you do amongst the community and in society.
We also have Karen. It looks like we're not going to be able to have Thanksgiving at her house, but next year, Karen. She just said we have. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and she's super excited for the T-shirt and the knowledge, and she just is so happy that you're awesome.
CR, who doesn't want 12 more people at their Thanksgiving dinner? I mean, my 8, your 4. I mean, that's just like a given, isn't it? That you just have 12 people show up and crash the place.
Yeah, we could be super spreaders. It would be no problem at all.
Yeah, the problem I'm getting to is I've got 3 boys, 2 teenagers and 1 college, and they eat like horses, I think. I thought it was expensive when I had them all at home and younger, and now I look at the way my boys eat, and it's like, okay, I don't wish that on anybody.
So you'll have 2 turkeys at Thanksgiving tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we'll have 3 turkeys, and then we'll being the boys, and then we'll eat ham. So,
well, Dave, happy Thanksgiving. I'm so excited that you were able to be with us. And obviously, again, look for us next week at 11 a.m. Central Time as we're going through and talking more. I mean, we have, I think you said last time, over 4,000 questions now that have finally come in for retirement. And so we obviously will be doing this for a very long time, and we're adding new platforms. We're changing constantly and adding, but we're going to be doing this for a while. And I really appreciate you sticking around and doing this.
Absolutely. And love the questions. It amazes me, even with all those questions, it's amazing how many new great questions we get. That's what's surprising to me. I can go through it. Obviously, you get repeats when you've had 4,000 questions. People have the same issues that they're going through. But every week we get a new question that I've not seen before, something maybe we really need to get out to other people that they need to know more about. So please keep bringing them in. It gives us an opportunity to create webinars around these topics. It allows us to create podcasts around those topics, as well as just answer the questions here in these live events.
Yeah. And so again, everyone, happy Thanksgiving Eve. Make sure that you stay safe and are just enjoying your time with whatever family you can get together. I know I have my daughter, we can't get together with her, but everything is just, we're just kind of surviving right now. But I want to make sure that we still take action on our retirement. So that's just not sitting there and just waiting for some type of action, but we're actually being proactive with that. So with that, Dave, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for being part of the show.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Bye.